Tonight on First at 9 this Saturday the 22nd of June 2024. The Neighbourhood Connection. Joint ventures between India and Sri Lanka in the energy sector to be expedited, says President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Facts and figures. Cardinal breaks his silence. Says 460 million rupees worth of funds distributed among the survivors and victims of the Easter Sunday attacks. Wealth redistribution. Imputed rental income tax to exclusively burden the wealthiest 10% of the country, reveals the State Minister of Finance. The art of the deal. Economic scholars and business chambers call on policy consistency while negotiating FTAs.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබා දෙත හැක.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story this evening, highlighting that his primary goal is granting rights to the people of the country, President Ranil Wickremesinghe emphasized that the lands granted under the Urume initiative should be protected and passed on to the next generation. During his tour to Batticaloa, the President inspected the current progress of the renovations of the Zion Church in Batticaloa, which was severely damaged during the Easter Sunday bombings, and ordered the authorities to seek immediate assistance of the Sri Lanka Army to conclude its renovations. Meanwhile, Member of Parliament ALM Ataullah urged President Wickremesinghe to convert the Parliament to a constitutional assembly, which could pave the way for the President to remain in office for a few more years.
An event to distribute freehold deeds to 192 families across 14 divisional secretariats in the Batticaloa district was held today under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The event was organised under the government's Urume initiative, which aims to distribute 2 million freehold land deeds island-wide.
very experienced.
You are a very experienced political leader. You are well versed in the constitution. You have amended the constitution on several occasions. All Sri Lankans expect a constitution that allows them to live in harmony with each other. The elections are not an issue. We need to address the issues affecting the people of this country. Since you are a senior leader and also since the parliament has some time left in its tenure, you have the ability to convert the parliament into a constitutional assembly till the end of the present parliament's term. The constitutional assembly can then address all woes of the general public. I am of the opinion that if you are able to make that happen, you can govern not for 1 or 2 more years. You might be able to hold the office of the presidency for a few more years and address the issues of all Sri Lankans. Whether the election is delayed or not is not something that bothers us. We expect strategies to revitalize this nation. Our president knows which constitution fits our country the best. If an ideal constitution is enacted, all Sri Lankans will be able to unite in reviving the economy of the country.
I have only one goal, that is to provide rights to the people of this country. You need to safeguard the lands you own now. Some advised me to transfer ownership of land in the name of women and not men because it would prevent the men from selling the lands off. However, I did not take that advice. I trust men. I believe that they will develop these lands and pass them on to the next generation.
The President also inspected the Zion Church in Batticaloa, which was damaged during the Easter Sunday bombings. During the inspection, the President inquired into the reasons behind the delay in the progress of renovations and ordered authorities to seek immediate assistance from the Sri Lanka Army to conclude the renovation swiftly. The President also advised authorities to use funds from the Presidential Secretariat to that extent. Meanwhile, President Ranil Wickremesinghe also inaugurated the new district secretariat in Thiraimadu in the Batticaloa district this morning. The new district secretariat was built at a total cost of 1.055 billion rupees.
Less sugar, same great taste. From Melbourne.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe expressed his commitment to maintaining a strong partnership with India to achieve Sri Lanka's development goals. Emphasizing the urgency to expedite joint initiatives, President Wickremesinghe highlighted a comprehensive agenda aimed at carrying out several transformative bilateral projects with India. Addressing an event in Colombo, the President highlighted the importance of enhancing cooperation between the two nations, particularly in the energy sector, aiming to foster new development in the northern region.
The 31st All India Partners Meet 2024 was held in Colombo under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
As neighbours united by historical, cultural and economic bonds, India and Sri Lanka share a distinctive and enduring relationship. Your Excellency, we acknowledge with great appreciation the pivotal role that leadership plays in nurturing such partnerships. Under your stewardship, this relationship has flourished, characterized by mutual respect, cooperation, and a shared vision for a prosperous and harmonious region. We particularly commend your efforts to enhance connectivity and collaboration between India and Sri Lanka. The initiatives spearheaded under your guidance have not only strengthened economic ties, but have also enriched the cultural and social fabric that binds our nation.
If we go back to business the usual way, we are import-dependent economy, and we will have to again borrow money to pay for our imports. So are we going to start the vicious circle again, or otherwise to gradually transform ourselves into a highly competitive, export-oriented economy? Now, this is easier said than done in Sri Lanka. So we've decided on a new approach, that we are going to legislate our economic policy. Policies will follow to ensure economic transformation to a highly competitive economy, lay down the benchmarks for foreign investment, export earnings, and lay down the benchmark for reducing multidimensional poverty. I think it's the first time that we have done this in the region. When I was in Delhi last week, I discussed with Prime Minister Modi the need to accelerate the joint programs that we have decided. First is the grid interconnection between Sri Lanka and India, so that sustainable energy can be transmitted to India. We have the Sampur solar power project, which is a G2G project, and Three Island project, which is where we hope the groundbreaking can take place in July. So that's the basis of our energy partnership, and we are looking at developing Fork Strait for wind energy and solar energy, both countries to get together and have a large farm for renewable energy. We have also discussed India helping us to expand the Kankasanture port to ensure that more business comes into the port. We are also discussing with India on airport development. There has also been the land connectivity, the corridor. We've done pre-feasibility studies, and now we've agreed jointly to call for the feasibility study. And finally, the major events that we've talked is the development of Trincomalee. How we develop Trincomalee as a harbour which can then feed Tamil Nadu. The development of Trincomalee will include investment zones for industry. There will also be tourism areas, but the development of Trincomalee as a port, jointly by India and Sri Lanka, by our companies. And finally, the multi-product oil pipeline, which will come in from Nagapatnam to Trincomalee. We are waiting the final observations of it. So there will be one pipeline. Sri Lanka is planning to relocate its refinery in Trincomalee. There has also been an application by another Indian company from Tamil Nadu to build another refinery. If that's so, then we'll have two refineries and oil to make it oil center.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
State Minister of Finance Ranjit Simbalapitiya revealed that the proposed property tax, officially dubbed the imputed rental income tax, will come into effect after the first quarter of next year. The State Minister of Finance went on to say that all of Sri Lanka will benefit from the tax in the long run, while only the wealthiest 10% of all Sri Lankans will be burdened by it. He also assured the public that the tax incidence will not be passed on to low-income earners of the country at any cost, since the proposed tax is among the strongest direct taxes implemented worldwide.
This tax will not be in effect this year. We expect to implement this tax after the first quarter of next year. We expect to tax the wealthiest 10% of Sri Lankans through this new tax. The benefits of the tax will be distributed among the remaining 90% of Sri Lankans. Since this is a direct tax, we will be able to reduce indirect taxes charged from the 90% in the future. Primary assets of the wealthiest 10% will not be taxed. An extremely small percentage of the remaining assets will make a contribution to the state coffers. We will not burden even the wealthiest Sri Lankans with a tax that they cannot afford to pay. 90% of the population will only reap the benefits of this tax, They will not be burdened at all. Even the 10% of Sri Lanka's wealthiest individuals will benefit from this tax in the long run. This is not an indirect tax, so it cannot be passed on to other economic agents. The taxpayers will have to bear the burden of this tax themselves. Therefore, to suggest that low-income earners will be burdened by this tax is completely wrong. Property taxes are among the strongest direct taxes implemented worldwide.
Now in other news, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith refuted assertions made by former President Maithripala Sirisena recently and claimed that all transactions made for the benefit of the survivors and victims of the Easter Sunday attacks have been recorded and accounted for down to the last cent. While inviting anyone interested to inspect those accounts, the Cardinal revealed that 460 million of the 500 million rupees sourced through national and international donations have already been distributed among the survivors and the victims of the tragic Easter Sunday attacks.
Speaking to media yesterday, Archbishop of Colombo Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith commented on the recent controversial allegations levelled against him by former President Maithripala Sirisena.
The statement he made was completely wrong and malicious. He should have had the courtesy to inquire from the respective authorities before he made those allegations. Right after the Easter Sunday attacks, we sought national and international assistance to tend to the needs of the victims and survivors of that tragedy. We raised about 500 million rupees from donors as such, and about 460 million rupees of that amount have already been disbursed among the victims and survivors of the attack. Therefore, the former president's statement to that extent is completely false. I don't think he thought it through before he made that statement. We have accounts and records of all funds disbursed through banks down to the last cent. Anybody can come and inspect those records. We have never used those funds arbitrarily. We were very transparent in the management of those funds. We have no idea about that, but there is definitely politics involved in this matter. We also know that his party has fractured into several factions at the moment. Maybe he is psychologically affected by the political crisis in his party. We are not bothered by his comments because our conscience is clear.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa reiterated that his party is free of narrow political deals and claimed that his only deal is a social contract with all Sri Lankans in the interest of the country's development. He made those comments while addressing an event in Kurunegala.
A smart classroom was donated to the Mawatagama National School by opposition leader Sajith Premadasa under the 250th iteration of the Sakwala program.
Other than our party, all other parties have united in criticizing our efforts. That is due to their jealousy, anger and incompetence. There are deals behind all those criticisms. They are political contracts. I must assure you that this JB and I are not involved in political deals. We only have one deal, that is a social contract with the 22 million population of this country. I have no deals which guarantees me the presidency, premiership, cabinet and the state ministerial portfolios. The only social contract we have is the social contract to develop the nation. We have that contract with the 22 million strong population of Sri Lanka.
Now, Minister of Mass Media, Transport and Highways Dr. Bandula Gunawardena says that he will only support a candidate in the upcoming presidential polls who will continue to abide by the agreement that the incumbent government has reached with the International Monetary Fund until 2027. With that, let's take a look at some of the views expressed in the political arena.
The IMF, which has hailed as a solution to the crisis, has turned into a crisis itself along with the Rajapaksa Wickremesinghe government. They are trying to arrive at agreements both locally and internationally. Before those disastrous agreements are enforced, we remind the public that there is no solution other than defeating the Wickremesinghe Rajapaksa government in the upcoming presidential election.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ රාජපක්ෂ මේ හවුල් පාලනයේ පරාජය කිරීම ඇරෙන්න ජනතාවට වෙනත් කිසිදු විකල්පයක් නැහැ.
අපිට ආරංචි වෙන දේ තමයි 28ද 27ද ඔන්න
Based on the information we received so far, the president is scheduled to announce that Sri Lanka is an important member of the international financial market on the 27th or 28th of this month, since the country has overcome bankruptcy. He is also expected to announce his candidacy in the upcoming presidential election. These are rumors circulating on social media these days. Whether a country is bankrupt or not is informed to the financial markets via international credit rating agencies. Please do not lie to the people.
My support will be given to the candidate who will carry on the terms and conditions of the IMF agreement until 2027 and to the candidate who will support the debt restructuring process. If someone doesn't agree with the IMF's terms, they won't be able to manage the affairs of the country even for 2 weeks as the president.
Nimal Lanka is trying to help the incumbent president by uniting all other parties without the Rajapakshas. Discussions and debates have happened to that extent during the last week as well. I think it will be advantageous for Ranil Wickremesinghe if he contests in the polls without the Rajapakshas. Maybe that is the rationale behind Nimal Lanka's efforts.
And now let's see some local news in brief.
An accomplice of an infamous drug trafficker hiding in Dubai was taken into police custody in Kesalwatta yesterday. The suspect in question had a stash of crystal methamphetamine valued at nearly 500,000 rupees at the time of his arrest. Meanwhile, a small lorry toppled near the 6th mile post on the Puthulam-Anuradhapura main road, injuring 9 persons, including several children. Immediate measures were taken to hospitalize the injured for necessary treatment. The accident had occurred after the driver of the vehicle had fallen asleep at the wheel. In other local news, India's Marine Police detained 2 Sri Lankan nationals who allegedly entered Indian waters in a fibre boat. The suspects, aged 23 and 32, were separately interrogated by Indian central agencies while the fibre boat was thoroughly inspected upon detainment. According to an Indian police officer, surveillance duty personnel had intercepted the suspects after spotting the boat heading towards Mandapam, India.
Welcome back. Now in your business news, highlighting that Sri Lanka could not reap benefits from the Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement due to product uncompetitiveness. Senior lecturer at the Department of Economics of the University of Colombo, Dr. M. Ganeshamurthy, is of the view that a profound change in Sri Lanka's production structure is essential against a backdrop where Sri Lanka is negotiating several free trade agreements at the moment. He made those comments while addressing a webinar themed Trade Agreements Unlocking Economic Potential for Sri Lanka, organized by the Centre for Banking Studies. Meanwhile, Secretary General and CEO of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Buwanakabahu Pereira, called on the government to maintain policy consistency despite government changes to ensure that free trade agreements are not affected.
Our issue is Sri Lanka's trade liberalization process started in 1978, much longer than any country in the Asian region. But for different reasons, policy inconsistencies and well understood reasons, Sri Lanka did not go beyond certain limits. Especially after 2005, our trade liberalization efforts were completely ruined by the inward-looking policies, the so-called under the bandwagon of building national economy. So the building national economy had gone to the level of producing for the local market and not producing for the tradable items. And this is one of the reasons why we couldn't even reap the benefit of the Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. India is not using the Indo-Sri Lanka Agreement clauses to send their exports to Sri Lanka. Only 5% they are using, whereas we are using more than 65%. It means that even after so many years after liberalization, Sri Lanka's products are not competitive in the Indian market, whereas the Indian products are more competitive in the Sri Lankan market. It indicates that just merely opening or signing free trade agreements will not produce any kind of a palpable benefits unless there is a profound change in the production structure, and particularly in the tradable sector, and also improving productivity in the local economy. Just signing off the free trade agreements and waiting for benefits will not help. There should be a coordinated effort from the productive sector and also trade sector with well-coordinated team, which is necessary at the time.
In terms of the free trade agreements, yes, we have signed a few of those with India, Pakistan, Singapore, and we have just finished one with Thailand free trade agreement, and 2 preferential trade agreements covering few countries. But all those agreements, what we have done, are centered or covering specific region that is close to our neighborhood, that is Southeast Asia. Furthest has been with Japan. We have not gone anywhere towards Europe, North America, or South America. If we compare ourselves with Vietnam, if we look at the number of countries with which they have signed trade agreements, it's about 66. Ours is about 10 to 12 countries. Looking at these trade agreements, I believe we need to look at it very objectively. First of all, the trade agreements need to have the government support, and the political will needs to be there. When I say political will, when we open out our shores, our land, our trade to other countries, there has to be some consistency, and with change of government or any political changes should not change the policies what we have set up.
Now in international business news, the US's Biden administration advanced plans to restrict investments by US individuals and companies into China with a focus on curbing Beijing's ability to gain ground in semiconductors, quantum computing and artificial intelligence. The US Treasury said the proposed rules were intended to implement a narrow and targeted national security program focused on certain outbound investments in countries of concern.
The United States yesterday issued draft rules for banning or requiring notification of certain investments in artificial intelligence and other technology sectors in China that could threaten U.S. national security. The U.S. Treasury Department published the proposed rules and a raft of exceptions after an initial comment period following an executive order signed by President Joe Biden last August. The rules put the onus on U.S. individuals and companies to determine which transactions will be restricted or banned. The Treasury said the new rules were intended to implement a narrow and targeted national security program focused on certain outbound investments in countries of concern. The proposed rules would ban transactions in AI for certain end users and involving systems trained in using a specified quantity of computing power, but would also require notification of transactions related to the development of AI systems or semiconductors not otherwise prohibited.
And now in some of your latest corporate updates, the Executive Committee of the Ceylon Association of Shipping Agents engaged in a tour of the Hambantota International Port aimed at strengthening relations between the CASA and the Hambantota International Port while exploring future opportunities the port holds for Sri Lanka's shipping and logistics sector. With that, let's take a look at some corporate news in brief.
The Chief Executive Officer of the Hambantota International Port Group, Johnson Liu, highlighted the importance of establishing proper policies in the shipping sector to attract new businesses into the country. These remarks were made when the Executive Committee of Ceylon Association of Shipping Agents toured the Hambantota International Port last week in a bid to strengthen relations between CASA and the Hambantota Port, foster collaboration and explore future opportunities. During the visit, Chairman of CASA, Shano Sabar, expressed his appreciation of the port's developments and commended the measures put in place to achieve a 20% year-on-year growth in the next 5 years. Meanwhile, Chairman of Lion Brewery Ceylon plc, D.A. Cabral, stated that the company restructured their international business strategy to improve its profitability and growth trajectories. In its annual report for the financial year 2023-2024, Cabral added that the company consolidated resources and focused them on key growth markets, allowing them to invest more in several selected markets. Also in corporate news, Dankatua Porcelain plc announced the resignation of Dr. Kanchana Sanjeeva Narangoda, a non-executive director of the company, with effect from the 10th of June. In its corporate disclosure, the company stated that Narangoda held an indirect relevant interest in 36,422,571 shares of Dankatua Porcelain plc, representing 22.41% ownership.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Ada Derana First at 9. Stay in touch with us on www.adaderana.lk for the latest developments around the clock. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.